When you're securing access to Azure PaaS services like Azure Storage, Azure SQL Database, Key Vault, or Cosmos DB, one of the most powerful tools at your disposal is the private endpoint. It lets you connect to these services over a private IP, keeping your traffic entirely inside your virtual network. No exposure to the public internet at all. Imagine this. You are building an enterprise app hosted in a private VNet, and it needs to access an Azure SQL database. You don't want to allow public access even with firewall rules. What you need is a private endpoint, a direct and private bridge to that SQL instance, anchored right into your own subnet. A private endpoint creates a network interface in your VNet with a private IP address tied directly to an Azure PaaS resource. From your perspective, it looks like you are connecting to a resource inside your own network, even though it's a Microsoft managed service. Once configured, all traffic to the PaaS service goes through that NICs, fully private, fully secure, and totally hidden from public exposure. You should use private endpoints when your top priorities are security, isolation, and compliance. Here's why they matter. Your data never traverses the public internet. You can fully disable public access on the PaaS resource. You're controlling access using NSGs, route tables, and firewalls just like with any other internal resource. Ideal for regulated environments like finance, healthcare, government. If you are aiming for a zero trust network design, private endpoints are a critical piece of the puzzle. One of the trickiest parts is DNS. When using private endpoints, the public DNS name of the resource, like myaccount.blob.co.windows.net, now resolves to a private IP inside your network. To make this work, you'll need to use Azure private DNS zones. Link them to your VNet. Ensure name resolution happens internally, not through external resolvers. Without this step, your apps won't know to use the private route, and you might unintentionally bypass the endpoint. Private endpoints support a wide variety of Azure services, including Azure Storage, like blob file, queue, table, Azure SQL Database and SQL Managed Instance, Azure Key Vault, Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Web Apps via Azure App Service Environment, Azure Container Registry, Azure Machine Learning, Azure Event Hubs, Service Bus, and more. Microsoft keeps adding support, so the list keeps growing. As you design your network, use NSGs on the subnet, hosting the private endpoint NIC for fine-grained control. Avoid overlapping IP spaces if you are doing peering or hybrid connectivity. Consider routing conflicts and DNS failovers carefully. You can use private link service if you need to expose your own services over private endpoints. And yes, private endpoint not equal service endpoint. Service endpoints give secure access to PaaS services using their public IPs, but route the traffic over Azure's backbone. Private endpoints remove the public IP entirely and bring the service into your network. You'll find private endpoints incredibly useful in several real-world scenarios. Suppose you need to connect securely to an Azure SQL database from your on-premises network, but you want to avoid setting up a VPN or exposing the resource to the internet. Private endpoints solve that perfectly. If you are running an Azure web app that needs to access secrets from Azure Key Vault, establishing a private link ensures that connection stays entirely within your trusted network boundary. When your application in a VNet needs to read data from blob storage, using a private endpoint keeps that traffic private without ever touching the public internet. And if you're working in a regulated industry where compliance demands that all data stays within private network paths, private endpoints help you meet those strict security and audit requirements with ease. So, what's your key takeaways? If you are serious about security, privacy, and control in Azure, private endpoints are not optional, they're essential. They give you a level of access and isolation that fits seamlessly into enterprise grade architectures. You are no longer just consuming services, you're extending your private network all the way into the heart of Azure's cloud native capabilities. So take control. Use private endpoints, lock down public access, and build secure by default solutions with confidence.